President Trump is escalating his efforts to bring China to the negotiating table on a new trade deal. He's proposing to raise tariffs on Chinese goods from the original 10% to 25%. The tariffs would target $200 billion in Chinese goods. This includes aircraft parts, diesel trucks, medical equipment, and flat panel TV screens. China retaliated with sweeping tariffs on a range of U.S. goods like soybeans, corn, wheat, tobacco, and whiskey. Increased cost of goods from tariffs could force companies to cut costs, which can lead to layoffs. Tariffs and retaliation could lead to a loss of more than 450,000 jobs. That's according to the trade partnership. The White House has already approved $12 billion in emergency aid to farmers who are caught in the trade war. So what do Americans think of these tariffs? Well, a new NBC News Wall Street Journal poll shows only 26% believe that the tariffs will help the United States. Joining us now is a former U.S. Trade Representative and former Mayor of Dallas, Ron Kirk. Sir, good to see you. Thank you for being with us. We just heard from...
Always good to be with you.
Thank you, sir. We just heard from the Secretary of Commerce, Wilbur Ross, on Fox Business on this new potential hike, the escalation of this with China. Let's listen to what he said, and we can discuss it on the other side.
Well, the reason for the tariffs to begin with was to try to convince the Chinese to modify their behavior. Instead, they've been retaliating. So the president now feels that it's potentially time to put more pressure on in order to modify their behavior.
Secretary Kirk, is this a good way to do this? I think we can agree, and you can agree from your time as the U.S. Trade Representative, there are issues with the way China behaves on the world stage as it relates to trade, as it relates to the protection of international intellectual property and other matters. But we now have ourselves in a trade war with Mexico and Canada and the United States that we weren't looking for.
We do not, Ali, and as you know, and you correctly noted, China's behavior under the rules of the World Trade Organization have been problematic for some time, but it shouldn't go unspoken that previous administrations have engaged China on this. When I was privileged to serve as U.S. Trade Representative for President Obama, we sued China 10 times and successfully on a number of these matters, but one of the reasons we were successful is we were able to engage those allies that we are now in a separate trade spat with, from Mexico and Canada and the European Union, to jointly come to the table and try to encourage China to improve their behavior. And one reason we didn't just go to sort of the blunt tool of tariff threats is that the cost is ultimately borne by U.S. consumers, U.S. businesses, and U.S. workers. And as we've seen in case after case, whether it was the tariffs on steel or the threatened tariffs against the European Union, it was American businesses and farmers that have screamed the loudest.
Right.
And what concerns us now is to get to the next level of tariffs that President Trump has threatened. The overwhelming negative impact of that will be on American families and American consumers.
And the government is, I think, coming up with $11 or $12 billion in assistance, particularly for farmers. But the U.S. Chamber of Commerce estimates that if you take all the losses to Americans, we're looking at $39 billion without this new escalation to China. So how do you weigh that? Because we've been out there talking to farmers. Our reporters have been out there, and many of them are willing to stand by the president for a little while. They feel that there's a lot of unfairness in trade, and they feel the president's talking tough on their behalf. But a lot of these people live on razor-thin margins.
They do. And again, you know, Ali, one of the reasons we didn't just go to that, because most countries always respond against agriculture first. And look, I think anytime we invite a tariff war, it ultimately is going to hurt us. But your average farmer is frankly not Boeing or Caterpillar, and they can't sustain these ridiculous retaliatory tariffs and loss of market share beyond more than a few months, because then they're out of business. And so I think it is a very blunt tool that might give some short-term effect. But I also, I can't help, nothing's funny about this. I can't imagine President Obama having unilaterally said, oh, we're going to throw $12 billion to the auto industry without our Republican friends in Congress just screaming bloody murder about what that is doing to our deficits. And the fact is that this president wants to be rewarded for putting out a fire that he started. And there are simply more thoughtful ways to try to engage with China and correctly get them to address their behavior. That was one of the principal reasons we decided to become a part of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, because it would have extended the U.S. rules, and particularly for intellectual property rights protection throughout Southeast Asia, and sort of boxed China in.
Right.
But as you know, the president came in and immediately took that off the table,
Right.
as he subsequently did with the proposed trade agreement with the European Union. And then now he reaches the brilliant observation that perhaps we should have a tariff-free trade agreement with the European Union, which we were well on our way to negotiating.
Yeah, it is kind of remarkable. Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there and click on any of the videos here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.